Hello, 4 o'clock Grandmasters. Mike from the WCA. I'm going to do something a little bit different this week, being that some of you, or actually more than half of you, did not complete your Endgame puzzles. I'm making a solutions video this week. So if you're looking at this video, you're actually getting the answers and some tips about how to solve the puzzles from last week. Okay, so we did one or two of these in class. I'm going to go through them again here so you have them forever on the video. Make sure you guys do them in the future. Okay, so for week 6 you'll get this video. Week 7 you'll get some more endgames to try, and week 8 that comes the simul. Hope you guys are ready for that. Okay, anyway, the solution to this, it's a classic breakthrough. These 3 against these 3. This trick doesn't always work. It obviously depends on what row your pawns are on and where the kings are, but it's just useful to know that 3 on 3 you can force a breakthrough by pushing the pawn here in the middle. Just throw it right into the black pawns. If they take from your left, you see how this A pawn is from the left side of from your viewpoint? Then you push the pawn on the right into the structure. In this example, I'm going to show you what happens if they take from your right. So the C pawn took, right? So this pawn came from our right side. So we push the left pawn into the structure, and you're going to make a queen. If they take you, you push past. If they don't take you, you're going to take in queen. I guess black's best try is to take. This way they keep 3 pawns on the board, but there's actually no way to stop you from queening. If they attempt to start walking their king over, you're just going to queen. There's a lot of different things black can do. They can try to push these pawns, but obviously they're not going to be fast enough. So once you queen, personally in these positions, you can just, there's so many ways to win. You can put your queen in the middle of those pawns and start picking them off. I like the idea that the queen just keeps the black king cut off. So just bring your king over and let the black pawns march up the board. There's really nothing they can do. If B5, just queen C5 check, and then you take this pawn next, and these two are going to fall very quickly, right? So back here, I don't know, maybe their best is to push a pawn, let you take that, but you can just take these 2 right after it, or you can just simply walk your king over. Okay, there's nothing really to show here. They push the pawn again, just walk your king. King D4, walk your king, and it's over. A3, walk your king in. A move like this, then just a simple check. King goes away, and then park your queen behind that pawn, and you're going to take them all like ripe apples. Okay? Okay, this was number 2, and somebody made a mistake here by moving their king to G5, which is a complete draw. One of the one of the students handed the answers in. I just take your pawn, and once I take with opposition, there's no way for you to get in. You guys know this draw. I'm not going to repeat all this to drive you guys nuts, right? Push the pawn, and there's no way to make progress. I'm just going to go straight back, and when you try to come in, I'm going to take opposition, and the game is over, right? So from this position, perhaps the fanciest way to win, or the coolest way to win, or I should say the correct way to win, is just push the pawn. Because what it does is it forces the black king out. And here you just have to know the simple rule that if your pawn is on the 5th rank, your king just needs to get to any one of these 3 critical squares, and you'll automatically win the game. So for example, here, to do that, you just simply queen. Okay? Black must take. You simply take opposition, and if the king goes here, you win pretty easily, right? Just here, check, and up you go. All right, so I'll take you back one more time. There's the position. You could also win here by playing king to F5. And this also works as long as you understand now your pawn is on the 4th rank, which means your king has to be able to touch one of these 3 squares, and to do that again, you would take opposition. If the king goes this way, you simply go this way. And here it doesn't really matter where the king goes. You can push this pawn without thinking, because again, there's that rule of 5 and 6. The pawn is on the 5th rank, and the king is already on the 6th. So this is a win, okay? All right, Grandmasters, this is number 3 you're looking at. And this was kind of cool, and you have to be careful here with black. So the question we asked you was that black just offered white a trade of rooks. Was it a good idea? Yes, it was actually, because the position is now a draw regardless of what white does. And I'll take you through some of the possible lines so that you know. There are a couple of traps here that white could set for you, but if you're careful and just keep calculating and use your previous endgame knowledge, you should be okay. All right, so the first thing we have to look at is if they take you, right? I mean, they could just swap off the rook on d8, and that would, clearly be a problem. So in your mind, we were wondering, what were you thinking by allowing this trade, right? It's clear that white can just take. So you needed to have an answer to that right away. So let's take a look at what you did. After rook takes, obviously you need to take back. There's a trap that white can set, and the trap is king to d4. And the idea of king to d4 is they're hoping that you allow the king to grab one of these 3 squares. Because again, white's pawn is on the 4th rank, which means in order to win, the king needs to be able to get his king, needs to be able to get 2 ranks ahead of the pawn. So if the king comes to this square on his next move, you need to be able to play king d7, taking opposition. If the king decides to come, it's amazing my program does that. It sounds like a tea kettle whistling. I don't know if you can hear that or not. If I come to this square, you need to be able to put your king here. So you have to have an answer. There's that tea kettle again. You need to have an answer to both. So the move that draws is king to e8, okay? So that if I play king e5, you play king e7. Let's go back, king e8. If I play king d5, you need to find king d7. And this is a draw. As soon as white starts pushing the pawns, you guys should all know this draw. Straight back with the king. Once they take opposition, king d8, and then everybody in the class should know what to do from here. Okay? So just remember that after king d4, that you needed to find that move king e8, which is here. I'll show it to you again. So you answer this move with this, and you answer king here with king d7. Okay? So let's go back to the original position. If the rook takes, it's a draw. Well, let's see. What if I set up a move like rook d5, offering you a chance to trade with me? Should you do it? Yes, you should. Because if you take it, this is even easier to draw because you have this automatic blockade. And once you blockade a pawn on your turn in chess, it's always a draw. No matter where the king and pawn is, you're always going to draw as long as your move was blockading the pawn. What does he do? You're attacking the pawn. He could try king e4. You just back up. You just need to be able to take opposition. If king e5, you can pause the video if you need to, but I hope you play here. Right, Ben? Yeah, I'm saying Ben because Ben messed this one up the other day. Yep, nobody's counting. Anyway, let's go back to the original. What about a move like rook d3, offering you a chance to trade up there on d3, this time getting the king involved? Well, here again, go for it, because once I take back, these are the 3 critical squares white needs to get to with the king in order to win. He's not going to be able to do that because you simply play king up to d6, and when he plays this move, which is taking opposition, the problem is he needs to get control of one of these 3 squares. It's not going to work. If it was these 3 squares, then he would be able to win because you're going to have to give him one of those squares, but he can't get his king in anywhere dangerous. Just slide the king over, and that's it. You have a draw. Pawn pushes, king straight back, king comes up, king comes over, dead draw. right? Okay, let's go back. Finally, what if the rook up there decides to play something like check? Any move, whether it be a check or not, gives your king a chance to cross over, getting in the line of the pawn, which makes your drawing ideas much easier. If he rechecks you, now you just jump to the other side of the pawn, and you're that much closer to the action with your king. If he takes your rook, it's the same position we looked at. If he doesn't, he's got to do something with his rook, and your king is already in front of the pawn, again, which will give you lots of drawing chances, okay? So if you answered taking the black rook was the right idea, or offering the trade, you were correct, as long as you worked out all the possibilities, okay? Okay, this next one was a little bit more difficult, and I don't know how many of you birds worked this one out. It's kind of cute, kind of an interesting solution. The key to this was to understand that there was not only a pawn race going down, that, you know, let's just count here quickly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 moves for white to make a queen. And for black, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 moves, okay? So it normally tells you if each pawn takes the same number of moves to queen, there's a very good chance that the position will be a draw. Because if I put a queen on the board and you put a queen on the board, unless there's a direct mating attack or a skewer or something, the game's going to be a draw. I don't care if you have a queen. You can check me all you want. I'm just going to move out of the way, and eventually you're going to run out of checks, or it's going to be perpetual. You're not going to win unless I do something silly like get caught in a skewer. Here the key is, because your king is closer to the middle of the board and your pawn is on the outside running, you have an opportunity to kind of harass or bother this pawn, which would force this king over to protect it. Otherwise, your king will just take it and black will lose, correct? Okay, the key is you have to force the king to this square. Can you see why? Because you'll be on the same diagonal of your queening square. That's a trick that comes up in lots of king and pawn openings. So the correct way to play is to push the pawn, start the race, push the pawn, and at some point your opponent's going to play e4. Now you attack the pawn, which means if they push it, you take it, so they have to protect the pawn. Stalling on f4 will not help, because after you push and they push the pawn, you just drop your king down, and they're going to have to put their king here anyway. So it doesn't save them any trouble, so they might as well play king f3. And this was the key to the solution. If you got this far, you pretty much solved the problem. Push, 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 and no matter what they do, you're going to queen with check, or you were going to get them to move their king with the pawn back here on the 6th rank. Once you check and the king comes to f2, we've already taught you guys how to win against the pawn on the 7th. When the king and the pawn are together, attack the king from the file. When the king moves and separates, attack the pawn as close as you can get to it along the file, and you'll see why that's useful. King f1, and what you're doing with your queen is you're kind of going to zigzag her up the board until you form this V. Can you guys see this? It looks like a less than sign from where I'm sitting. Once you get that, so for example, when the king moves, you just put the queen on e5, attack the pawn, the king protects it. When they're together, attack the king. When they separate, attack the pawn. The king has to protect, and there's your magic V. Only move is king e1, otherwise you lose the pawn, and now simply bring your king in. So even if your king was far away, you just keep repeating this process until he gets to a square like this, and then you just mate the king. Okay? Queen takes, king here, and checkmate. Okay, Grandmasters, this is the final position that we had in class. You were sitting from the black side, and we talked about this one already. Even with these 2 extra pawns, white cannot win, specifically because this is a G pawn, and we've talked about it in class, so hopefully you remember the solution. As long as your king does not come up to these squares, allowing a check from the rook, There's no way for white to get you out of here. You also have to make sure that you don't put your king on this square, on f7, because then the rook will come behind you, and when you take the pawn, you'll get skewered. But as long as you keep going back and forth between these two squares and keep your rook anywhere on this line, keeping an eye on your opponent's pawn down here, you're okay. And I'll just show you, I played this against the computer, which thinks it's winning, but it's not. It's a total draw. So let me show you what the computer did. I played king g7. Computer plays king f4. So what are your moves to waste? Just push your king into the corner, and it doesn't really matter what the computer tries to do. So now his king is coming out in the middle, so we just shuttle back. The king's idea is to come down and support this pawn, but we have an answer to that. Play your waiting moves, and once the king is in like the middle of the board, he's going to try to just hang around the middle. You can start giving a check or two, as long as you can get back to the square or any square on this line to guard that pawn. But you see the way the computer's decided to play? The king is totally exposed. It can't hide behind these pawns, so when it gets close, just keep checking. King c5, and then go back, because the king is not connected to the pawn. If this rook moves anywhere, you just take the pawn, and your king's already in a great position to stop this guy. The game will be a draw. So they'll set a trap. They might play a move like king pawn g5, waste your move, pawn g6, telling the king, hey, take a free pawn, but you can't take the pawn, because if you take it, now your king is no longer on the 7th rank. You're going to get hit with this check, and no matter what you do, on my next turn, I make a queen, which protects the rook protects the queen, and you're in trouble. If you take the queen, I'm a rook up, and if you move away, I'll mate you very quickly with the queen and rook, okay? So once that pawn reaches the g6 square, now you can't waste any more time with your king. You just have to keep moving your rook up and down this line. Do not let this rook move and then threaten to queen. As soon as this rook moves, you have to be able to take this pawn. King b4, go far away from the king. King b3, rook a6. See the idea? Stay on the pawn, stay away from the king. All the way up to a1, king c5, he's in the middle, we start checking from the side. They have one last trick. You have to make sure that on a move like king c3, you don't check again. That's really bad, because I can play king b2, and now you can't get back to your little perch over here to stop my pawn. You're going to lose the game. So as soon as king c3 is played, go behind the pawn. If they attack your rook, you come up the board and hold the draw. Okay? As long as you don't take this pawn with either piece, really, you're okay. All right, Grandmasters, this is all you had to do this week. You have to come in next class, all 4 o'clock students, completely with show us that you've mastered every solution that we gave you today, okay? All right, we'll see you later.